Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Friday, January 8th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. How about a basketball team with a 54-point swing in 2 games? That's what Kansas did this week. Here's one even crazier. Missouri had a 29-point swing in a game at Mississippi State. Kansas State, hey, the Wildcats are just looking for a victory, but they played well in spurts lately. We talk Jayhawks, Tigers, and Wildcats on today's show with beat writers Gary Bedore, Jesse Newell, Souichi Terada, and Kellis Robinett. We get a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Okay, Gary Bedore and Jesse Newell are with us. Hope you guys are doing okay. And Kansas coming off a 29-point victory over TCU on the road. And if I got my my calculator out and look this real quick computation here, that's a 54-point swing for the Jayhawks in 2 games. Minus 25 to plus 29. Gary, how did level of competition had something to do with it, but Kansas just played a whole lot better the other night, didn't they?
Yeah, and what extremes, like you said, the 29-point win was their 3rd biggest blowout on the road in the Self era in league play, and the loss to Texas by 25 was the worst loss in Allen Fieldhouse history. I laugh, but it's been 66 years that thing's been open, and 25 is a blowout, but not that big, and Missouri beat him in 1989 by 25. So to turn it around like that, Curtis Townsend said on the pregame show I was listening that the team was really embarrassed when they found out that they'd set that record of the worst loss at home ever. And they're a proud bunch, and they did play hard that whole game. They never came close to blowing the lead or anything, and they had so many guys play well. You know, there were maybe 6 guys that all had really good games. So
You're right, and not just guys off. Obviously, that meant some guys off the bench, and it had to come from different sources because Marcus Garrett didn't play, Bryce Thompson didn't play. Jesse, I thought first of all Tristan Enaruna had probably his best game, and David McCormick. We cannot have a podcast without talking about David McCormick. Played well. That's the kind of David McCormick performance you need to be effective. Listen, it's not the length of Texas or the presence of West Virginia in the paint. Totally different. But that Samuel guy for TCU is a big dude, and McCormick they just seem to. I don't know. His effectiveness is based on the shot selection and just a bunch of factors with him. Why did he play so well?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it, and Bill Self mentions this a lot, Blair, when talking about David. The matchup is going to determine a lot with him. And if he gets to play against a true center who is sort of big like him, it's going to be helpful. And that's exactly what Kevin Samuel is. If he plays against a guy like Jericho Sims from Texas who can take one dribble from the top of the key, take 2 steps and lay it in off the glass because he's super athletic, that's just not the kind of guy that David McCormick is, or potentially the kind of guy that he can guard. So that's part of it. I think the coaching staff is helping him now. It's got to be tough for Dave. Let's start with this. I mean, he's been criticized from a lot of places. I've talked a lot, about how poorly he's played this season, and he had a lot of expectations going in. So for him to stick it out and to play this well against TCU, a lot of credit goes to him. But I think they're trying and they're starting to figure out some things with David. And if you look at how KU scored a lot in that game against TCU, they pulled that big man away from the basket. It opened up driving lanes. And then when he was out there, David would set some screens and he was cutting really hard to the rim. And that resulted in KU getting some angles on drives. And it also resulted in them throwing over the top and getting David open for some lobs. And so I think he played with better energy. I think the coaching staff is putting him in better places. And I think he needs to play without the weight of thinking that he has to be this team's leading scorer, because that did not work for Kansas in the first 8 or 9 games when he was taking all those fadeaway turnarounds from 14 feet and, coming up short or airballing most of them and starting off with like a 33% 2-point percentage from a big man who should be taking it to the rim. So look, there are things he can do. He can lean against a big guy in the post. He's an amazing free throw shooter. He's made 21 21 free throws in a row, which is a great accomplishment for a big man. And again, he should be taking it strong whenever he can, because if he can get to the free throw line, that's a big win for Kansas. But I think Kansas is going to continue to move forward with him playing a role offensively rather than feeling like he has to be the guy offensively. And a lot of that is because of how things have fallen, and also because some other Jayhawks have emerged so far this year as better guys who can kind of overtake and take over that offensive role.
Heck, I think he should shoot the 17-foot jumper from straight ahead. I mean, you're right. He's such a good free throw shooter, and he's got range, obviously, for a big guy. Gary, I did not realize that the win on earlier this week was this, I guess, Tuesday, 11th straight on the road for KU, dating back to last year. That's pretty healthy. And when you think about it, the game that they were 17-1 in conference play last year, and the one that they lost was at home, right, to Baylor earlier in the year.
Yeah, so they've tied the school or the league record for most road wins in a row. It was KU that said it before. But that is incredible to win 11 in a row on the road. They want to just keep that going because, normally they drop a couple, obviously. But the other night they played so well that they probably were going to win against most competition. Baylor really looks good. I watched their game last night, and it's going to be tough to win there. Although with no fans, the road's different this year, but that accomplishment is yet another Bill Self accomplishment that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, we're going to hear later in the podcast from Kellis Robinett, who covers Kansas State, wrote a story earlier this week that we discussed that, in the Big 12 this year, the road team won 8 of the first 12. And look, it's going on all over sports, right? In the NFL, the road team had a winning record in games this year, which is amazing. Jesse, you pointed it out in a story that you wrote, and with some video attached, that Jalen Wilson took on some responsibility in this game and was mindful of a point guard in a couple of instances. I thought that was really curious that it wasn't, obviously Kansas didn't have Marcus Garrett in the game, but the plays that you pointed out and posted in the story are plays that you would think someone else on the team would have made, and said Jalen Wilson was asked to do them, and turned out well on both occasions.
Yeah, it's KU really has found something with Jalen Wilson. I mean, I think this guy is really, really good on the offensive end. And we talk about, David McCormick not really living up to the offensive role that everybody thought he would have coming this season. Jalen Wilson just keeps taking on more and more and more, and just seems to be equipped for it. And he has amazing efficiency numbers and continues to increase his offensive role as it goes forward. But he had a lob pass that you could see in the replay of the video, like it was the exact replica of what Devon Dotson did a couple years ago, the same play. And then he also had a backdoor cut pass to a cutting DeJuan Harris that Devon Dotson made the exact same pass on the exact same play, ironically enough, or coincidentally enough, against TCU at TCU last year. So it was kind of like a carbon copy of the play, only you're having your 6'8" small forward make the pass instead of your 6'1" point guard who's now in the NBA. So I just think he's been kind of a revelation for Kansas. And to me, he is the reason that KU needs to spread things out to the perimeter. And he's the guy that they've got to center more of their offense on, because whatever they've asked him to do, he's been able to do. I mean, think about all of it. He can rebound. He's great on the offensive glass. He can pass. He's not turning it over. He can make open threes. He can drive to the rim. He's one of their best finishers at the rim. So a little bit like I've kind of been using this comparison. It's not a perfect one, but sort of how Iowa State used to do it with George Niang back about 4 or 5 years ago, where they'd get him the ball on the elbow and he'd kind of survey and look for cutters and then kind of create from there. I think Kansas needs to look to do that sort of thing with Jalen Wilson, and they did it a lot against TCU, which was good. I mean, he was either driving or he was finding others. 16 points. 8 rebounds, and then he had 6 assists. He actually had 5. I went back and looked at all those videos, and DeJuan Harris got shorted one that they gave to Jalen Wilson. But still, again, for your 6'8" small forward to have 5 assists and to show that he can do that in a game, I think KU needs to lean on him more offensively and try to see exactly how much he can do.
I'll tell you what, Niang wasn't the most artistic player that I'd ever seen, but God, he was effective and ended up scoring, I think, over 2,000 points for Iowa State. He was he was quite an effective player. Hey Gary, let's wrap this up by remembering Lafayette Norwood, the former KU assistant coach. When I came to Kansas City, he was the coach at Johnson County Community College. And not only for basketball but golf. He coached golf longer than he did basketball. But just a presence in this area in Johnson County and at KU for almost his entire life. Right after leaving Wichita, where he helped Wichita Heights win the state championship, he was quite a kind of a fixture at KU, was he not?
Yeah, think of the different parts of the state he affected. He went to Wichita East, won a state title as a player, coached at Wichita Heights, had an undefeated team with Darnell Valentine, came to KU with Darnell, worked for Ted Owens for those 4 years. Then he goes to Johnson County. He worked there over 20 years as golf coach, like you said, and basketball coach. But he went to all the KU games, basketball under the Bill Self era. He often spoke to the team. Self does a great job of making former players and coaches involved, and Norwood was one of them. Wayne Simeon was really close to him. But Lafayette Norwood was just a really good guy. He would always wave when he came to the games. His wife passed away a few years ago, and he just he's one of those guys that nobody ever says a bad word about. So great guy, and he'll be missed around everywhere. Johnson County, Wichita, Lawrence, just a really good guy.
All right, sounds good, Gary. Thanks for that, and thank you, Jesse, for weighing in. And we will talk to you guys again next week. Souichi Terada covers Mizzou for the Star. Hello, Souichi. How you doing?
I'm good, Blair. Just kind of living the dream, and watching this ranked Mizzou basketball team.
So we had to start there, didn't we? They're still in the polls this week. I don't know. Maybe they need to win on Saturday to stay in the polls when LSU visits. But what in the world happened at Starkville? It's funny. We just heard from Jesse Newell and Gary Bedore, and we were mentioning that the KU actually had a 54-point turnaround between games, right? They lose to Texas by 25, and they beat TCU by 29. I think what Mizzou did was even more improbable, to have a 29-point turnover in a game, to look so good in the first half and lead by 14 and to end up losing it by the wide margin that they did. What's your interpretation of what happened?
One of the weirdest games I think I've ever seen, just because you mentioned them, like they had a 14-point lead in the second half. It's not like like it was like the 17 or 18 minute mark when Mississippi State went on this 15-0 run, and then it was, they end up losing by double digits. And I don't think I've ever seen a team look so good, because I think they played one of, if not their best half in that first half. And then they were just beating up Mississippi State, and Jeremiah Tillman looked great again, and he looked great for the whole game. But it was so weird. I think there were kind of some worrisome little bits and pieces in that first half, and I think it all kind of came to a head. I mean, DJ Stewart, by my calculations, he scored 13 straight, including some tough, it's not like I don't think Mizzou played horrific defensively. I think it was just DJ Stewart catching fire, and then Mizzou just happened to kind of be in the way. I don't know. Apparently the Bulldogs are very tired, according to the TV broadcast, and fans and writers, myself, are kind of tired of the color commentator kind of digging that into us a little bit. But I think you look at a few things. Mizzou only went to the free throw line 6 times. That's, that doesn't happen for Mizzou, Blair. If you look at the KenPom stats, they were actually coming into the game. They had one of the best free throw rates in the nation, top 10. So when I looked at that, I was like, something went wrong here. Ask Konzo. I think he didn't necessarily blame the refs. Obviously you don't want to get fined or anything like that, but he did admit he's never seen anything like that where they didn't get a foul, or they only got 3 foul calls in that second half, and it was kind of bizarre to watch because I think they were playing a little bit physical. And then Mizzou just got out-rebounded. I believe the margin was 37-22. That shouldn't happen for a Council Martin team. And between all those things, they were still kind of happening in that first half, but they were just playing so well. But I think when you mix in Mississippi State getting hot, Mizzou offense kind of looked a little rushed with its shot selection. The threes weren't falling and they haven't all season, but it was just a kind of a weird mix that essentially led to, like I said, one of the weirdest games you'll see as a fan. And it's weird, Blair, because you mentioned like that turnaround with KU. It's just with Mizzou. It's like they had such a great game against Arkansas.
Yeah,
some of them self-inflicted on the Hogs, I think, with the layups. But then you look at Mississippi State, and it's kind of this roller coaster so far in SEC play. So I'm curious to see what Mizzou looks like against the LSU Tigers on Saturday.
Well, I was willing to excuse the Tennessee loss after what I saw happen at Arkansas when they Missouri won impressively down there. And okay, so Tennessee was the exception. That was the they just got down and stayed down. Almost like that Kansas Texas game previous week, last week. That Tennessee Missouri was kind of like that. They just outgunned, outmanned, and okay, anybody can have a bad day at the office, and so Missouri did. But they go down and beat Arkansas, and then we get to halftime at Mississippi State, and it's like, okay, everything's fine. And then by the end of the game in Starkville, I'm back to thinking, well, what do we have here with this Missouri team? I mean, are we, is this, can we expect, is this a top 4 SEC team? Because that's what I was thinking after the Arkansas game. Even through the Tennessee game, I'm thinking, this Mizzou team can be top 4 and get that double bye and all that, and in the tournament. I just don't know now. I don't know. I haven't studied the rest of the conference. We know that it's not it's going to be a competitive league, but not necessarily top heavy. So there may be some, a lot of jockeying for positions. I think it's clear that Tennessee is the best team, but then Tennessee turns around and loses at Alabama the next game. So, help me bottom line at Souichi. What are we to make of Missouri, and is this something these next 2 games are going to reveal? LSU on Saturday, and then Vandy comes to Columbia on Tuesday.
Yeah, Blair, I think the bottom line thing is this is no matter what happens, I think by the end of the season, this is not a Mizzou team that's going to finish 10th at least. So from a bare minimum perspective, I think you can kind of take some solace in that. I still think they can compete for a top 4 seed in the SEC. You mentioned it as well, Blair. It's kind of a weird year. Tennessee, they lost to Alabama. They really struggled against Arkansas, and I know that's part of 3-point shooting, and there's some noise there, especially game to game. This is why college basketball is what it is, but it kind of makes you step back and wonder what's happening. Alabama's gotten off to a great start. LSU is another team kind of to watch. Florida, even without Keontae Johnson, looks dangerous, and you have a lot of kind of spicier teams, like Arkansas, like even a Georgia. So it's kind of a weird league. I think Tennessee is the best team, but they, when like I just mentioned, when the 3-pointers are going in for the opposing team and they shoot, 50%, I believe Alabama did against Tennessee. Like, no matter how good you are on defense, like sometimes you are just susceptible like that because that's just the volatility, of the 3-pointer and everything. So it's weird. I think Mizzou, this LSU game, I know it's still 3 games in, but I think just getting back to 2-2 would be a good start, and you have a chance to go above 500, against a bad Vanderbilt team. And I know they gave Kentucky fits, but we don't know Kentucky is. Blair, this is kind of I had this tweet kind of ready at halftime against Mississippi State, and we know what happened. But Mizzou hasn't been above 500. They have not had a winning SEC record since that 10-8 year in Council Martin's first year. The last 2 years obviously haven't gone as well, and it's just it's been a long time since Mizzou. You can type that Mizzou is whatever record they are with a winning SEC record. So I think getting to that first point, and I don't think the team cares about it. I think it's just something that I kind of thought of, but I think it's just kind of getting above that mental hurdle, I guess, or whatever, I think can go a long way. So it's still early, 18 games. I don't think Council Martin is very worried yet. You have an experienced squad. I think they'll get it together. You need a little bit more from Drew and Mark Smith. But otherwise, Pinson and Tubman have been playing great, and we'll see how that bench flushes out, just because it has been kind of a roller coaster few games for Mizzou.
Okay. All right. Hey, let's switch it up real quick and let's talk about football. Missouri loses a defensive coordinator. Ryan Walters heads out to Illinois to join the staff of Brett Bielema, and so there is a vacancy at Mizzou. Have we heard any names yet for the new DC? And what does this move mean to Mizzou?
Yeah, I think there's we haven't heard anything concrete. I think people are looking at like the Derek Masons of the world, who I believe is reportedly likely headed to Auburn, based on the last reports. So this can change day by day. And then there have been some kind of other interesting names, but nothing concrete yet. I think Drinkwitz is at the point where he might take a little bit more time, or it might be an internal hire as well. Ryan Walters actually was in contact tracing, or I believe had a positive, or his wife had a positive test, I believe, and he was in contact tracing for that. So he had to miss the South Carolina game. And so David Gibbs, secondary coach, he's a veteran guy. He's kind of an inside. If Mizzou does go with an internal hire, I think you'll see a guy like that. And he was the play caller, defensive coordinator. David Gibbs was when Ryan Walters was out. So you have a few kind of interesting names. I am personally, I think Mizzou, it was weird. Mizzou's defense had very great highs, keeping Kentucky and South Carolina 10 points, shutting out Vandy. But then the SEC offenses of late have been pretty potent. So Mizzou essentially reset his season high, the past 3 games against Arkansas, and then Mississippi State and all that. So it was just kind of a weird year for the defense. I think Ryan Walters kind of realized that, hey, maybe you might get a better job security going to Illinois, being, that head coach's external kind of pick, just because Drinkwitz did retain him from Barry Odom's staff. So I think maybe there was a little bit of that. So, Illinois, I think Mizzou fans would agree with me that Mizzou is absolutely a better job than Illinois, or a better football destination, especially historically. But I just think that it was maybe like a long-term play, just because Ryan Walters is still young. So he was probably kind of considering that when he was making that change.
Okay. All right, Souichi, great catching up with you. We will do it again next week. We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we'll hear from Kellis Robinett. We'll talk a little Kansas State. All right, Souichi, take care.
All right, thanks, Blair.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Hey, Kellis, what's up?
Not much, Blair. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. Happy New Year. I don't think we've talked since the calendar has turned. So since the calendar has turned, Kansas State hasn't won a basketball game, I don't believe. But, it's funny. When I watch the Wildcats, I see, spurts of good basketball, but just not enough of them. Just the other night, the Texas Tech game in Lubbock, they're coming out in the first part of the second half. I just thought they played really well offensively. And I think you can say that with a couple other games that they've played, but still an uphill battle for Bruce Weber's guys.
Yeah, they've definitely shown signs of improvement over the past month, just not quite enough yet to beat the better teams in the Big 12. And as you mentioned there, it's kind of interesting. You see improvement in one area in one game, and then some areas of regression in the next. The Texas Tech game was a great example. They go down to Lubbock and score 71 points against arguably the best defensive team in the conference. That's the highest number any Big 12 team has put up against Texas Tech this season, at least in regulation. KU went to Lubbock and only scored 58 against them. So normally you would say, hey, 71 points in Lubbock, that should give Kansas State a great shot at victory. But they can't stop one of the worst offensive teams in the conference and give up 82 points and lose. So that's kind of where they're at right now. The youth thing is still a factor. They're starting 3 freshmen. They even had 4 freshmen on the court at the same time at various points during the Texas Tech game, and that makes it awfully hard to win. And they've shown some nice signs on offense, but until they can figure out how to actually get in front of some defenders and stop some people off the dribble, they're not going to go on a long winning streak, at least in Big 12 play.
Right. It's going to be difficult. They've got home games coming up Saturday against Oklahoma State, and then Iowa State, who they just played, seems like a couple of weeks ago, back in Bramlage Coliseum on Wednesday. Kellis, you wrote something this week or this past week that was really interesting. I guess I hadn't been paying that much as close attention to it as you have, but the early results in Big 12 play eye-opening for this reason, not so much because Baylor and Texas and Kansas and some others are in the polls and playing really well, but the fact that home teams not doing a great job defending their home floor. And I just wrote a story. It's not been online yet. The NFL just went through the same thing where in the regular season, road teams actually had a winning record for the first time in history against home teams. And in Big 12 basketball, at one point, I don't know where it stands now, but at one point, road teams won 8 of the first 12 games in conference play. Is there anything beyond the obvious here? No fans in the stands. I mean, that's not only is it obvious, but it's a pretty significant factor. But is there anything else beyond that we can point to?
I mean, I think that's obviously the big thing. The biggest, if you want to look at any one result that kind of proves this theory of why in the world are Big 12 basketball teams going on the road and winning all these games. They were 9-4, I believe, on Monday night after West Virginia won came all the way back to beat Oklahoma State on the road. I'm not sure what the record is now, but the road teams have still won more games than the home teams this year, so very odd. But anyways, the lasting image I have of all this is just that picture that circulated online of Bill Self burying his head in his hands with the score of Texas beating Kansas in Allen Fieldhouse by 25. And that's something that just never, regardless of how good an opponent is, has happened in the past. Teams have won at Allen, here and there during the Bill Self era, but never a dominating fashion like that. And it's fair to wonder how fans in the stands would have affected that game. But not every place is Lawrence. Places like Baylor, places like Texas Tech traditionally don't have the greatest home court advantages, even with fans there. But I think the thing this year is just that it's just everything is so much different than the norm that every court feels neutral, whether you're playing at home, whether you're playing on the road. And I kind of wonder if there's some kind of weird element in that it almost feels more business-like. Teams take it more seriously when they are able to get on the plane, are able to go on the road and have a traditional road buildup. I don't know if part of that maybe gets players more psyched up for a game and makes things feel a little bit normal for them. But that's something I have worried or thought about other than just the fan element is that maybe there's something to, getting on the bus, going through a little bit more of a normal routine and playing these games on the road than there is at home when it just still kind of feels weird to, like, if you're a Kansas State player, come out in Bramlage and not see any students there. We've heard coaches talk about it before. Sometimes the hardest thing in the world to do is create your own energy when there's no fans in the stands. And if you're the road team, you're already probably pumped up to try to win on the road. If you're the home team, maybe that extra motivation isn't there, and that's part of the reason why road teams are having a little bit more success.
I think that's a good point. And maybe if you're the road team, you're bringing more focus into the game than you are as the home team, because you have gotten on the bus, on the plane, in the hotel, and it just lends itself to a more focused situation. So something to keep an eye on as we go forward in college basketball and Big 12 hoops. Hey, Kellis, I want to get your thoughts on just a couple things. I know you're a Heisman voter. Did your guy win the Heisman?
He did. I voted for Smith at Alabama. I thought he was probably the best playmaker all season, and also kind of selfishly, I'm sick of just seeing quarterbacks and running backs win it. So when a worthy wide receiver, somebody in a different position, comes up and says, "Hey, vote for me," I'm willing to do it. I've since I've been a voter for the last 10 or so years. I remember voting for Ndamukong Suh when he was at Nebraska.
Yeah,
good defender. I haven't been afraid to go out and vote for players that aren't quarterbacks, and I thought he deserved it. So I'm glad to see finally people looked away from just one position to give it to somebody.
Yeah, the guy was phenomenal, Devontae Smith, and of course we'll see him on Monday night, assuming that there's no delay in the national championship game between Alabama and Ohio State. Who you got in that one? The Crimson Tide. Last I saw was a 7-point favorite. I think I've seen it as low as 6.5 and up to 7.5, but last one I think I saw was 7. Do you like the Crimson Tide on Monday night?
I do. I think Alabama, a lot like LSU last year, is just head and shoulders above everybody else, especially on offense. Nobody's been able to go out and stop them. I guess the two things I would pay attention to are that Steve Sarkisian will definitely have his attention split in two different places for this game, with him
head coach of Texas,
becoming the new Texas coach, and then trying to coach this game. I don't know how much of a factor that'll be. We've seen plenty of times when coaches have been able to go ahead and take care of business in those situations. But I do think that adds an interesting wild card to it. And I guess I'm also curious to see is if Ohio State can play with that same us against the world mentality that they brought against Clemson. I think had people given them a little bit more love before that game and respect and said, you know what, this is a toss-up. Both teams are really good. I don't think Ohio State would have won the way they did against Clemson. I think they were angry and they had something to prove and they did it. But is that chip on their shoulder still there? I don't know. I don't know if you can bring that 2 weeks in a row. So that if they can do it again, then I'd give them a chance. But if they're not going to come out with just this vengeance to prove people wrong, I don't know. I still lean Alabama. I mean, shoot, they had three of their best players were in the Heisman conversation. That's a very tough offense to slow down. So I'll go Bama.
I agree with you. I think there's an opportunity for the game to be close for, half, 3 quarters, but in the end, Alabama just is superior, and we don't know how Justin Fields is after the hit that he took in the in the Clemson game. So, okay, well, Kellis, great catching up with you, and we will do it again next week.
All right, Blair, look forward to it.
That'll do it for today and this week. Thanks to our production staff and everyone who helps make SportsBeat KC happen: Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. A tip of the cap to Gary Bedore, Souichi Terada, Jesse Newell, and Kellis Robinett for stopping by and talking college sports. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we have another deal for you, especially for those who want a deep dive into the Stars' terrific Chiefs coverage. For a limited time, you could subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That's kansascity.com/sportspass2020. Do you want more than just sports coverage? I know I do. Check out the entire Kansas City Star product: sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. If you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, you send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and I will get you to the right place. Whether it's a sports pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Monday with a first look at the Chiefs' playoff opponent.